I struggle to find photographic inspiration on bright summer days. Join me on a short hike through woodland where I turn challenging conditions into photographic opportunities, but I long for a quiet and simple photograph after all that harsh lighting. Because of the weather conditions today and the time that we've arrived, I'm a little bit worried because I think it's going to be very contrasty and difficult to work in this location. So here we are down at Tar Steps, and it is as difficult to photograph as I remember. Once again I've come and it's a bright sunny day, that lighting's really contrasty, we're in a woodland setting and it just doesn't lend itself to this type of lighting. But since I was here last time, my attitude to photography has changed, and now I'm much more inclined to be able to sort of think about actually doing the best I can with what I've got around me at this moment in time. And I'm determined to come away from here with an image that I actually like, making best use of these conditions. Now at the end of the Clapper Bridge itself, there's a beautiful bright green tree in its fresh spring colours being lit up by that direct sunlight. And it's that tree which I think I'm going to use to make the photograph. I may even go for a 5:4 vertical composition, making the use of the length of the bridge sweeping into that tree and at that height of that tree up there. So let's just see how that works out. So despite not being really sure whether or not I would be able to get an image here because of the lighting conditions, I think this is going to really work out quite well. Using that tree is really working. Let me put the viewfinder video up and I'll explain to you what I'm doing. So I've composed this image pretty much exactly as I thought I would. I've gone for that classic vertical 4:5 crop, which works really well. The Clapper Bridge itself is providing that really good lead-in, and although it is one of the main elements, or certainly one of the main reasons I came here today, it's that tree which is really drawing my eye and my attention. And the Clapper Bridge works well to draw your eye into it. The exposure's given me an absolute headache, so I've ended up using a polarizer filter to kill off some of those reflections on the top of the water, a neutral density graduated filter just to tone the tree down a little bit, and also I've put on a standard neutral density filter just to smooth out the water so I can drop that shutter speed a bit. I'm not sure exactly what version I'm going to use, because when I've used the 6-stop ND, the problem is the water's become really nice and smooth, which was what I wanted, but there's a huge amount of unnecessary movement in the tree. So I've taken some other images as well without the tree so blurred. Maybe I'll combine them together in like a time blend photograph. I'm not 100% sure. I'll look at the finished result, because you never know, that movement in the tree might look really good. So I'll put this photograph up so you can have a final look at it. It's really getting quite busy here now, as you can hear, so it's time for me to move on. There's about 2 kilometers of a nice circular walk here, so we're going to see what we can come up with and what we can produce. I'm sorry it's so contrasty and difficult to watch the video, but that's what the conditions are like today. It's really hard work. In fact, I've just passed a subject which I hope would have helped, and I've just gone down past this bridge that isn't a bridge structure and had a look at some wooden logs and rocks which are lit in the stream with a dark background, but it's just not working. But at last I have found something that works really well. I found a bit of a rapid which has got like a jagged sort of edge to it, and it takes you out into a rock with a fallen branch on it, which looks really quite nice. But it's this jagged edge against the dark waters and the reflected greens that really took my eye, so I've set up a composition to do that. I've been struggling quite a bit, so let's come down and I'll talk you through what I've come up with. Oh, well, that's a bit better. At least you can see me again. It's not so contrasty for talking to the camera. I've set up this composition. You can't see the camera, but I'll put some viewfinder video up for you. And I've decided I'm going to make it a square comp. I've tried 16:9s, I've tried 4 or 5 crops and various other different formats, but I just couldn't get it to work properly. And almost out of desperation, I decided that I'd give it a chance at see what a square composition would look like. The way that I've set it up is to have this jagged line of water leading across the frame from the bottom right hand corner up towards the top of the frame, and then there's some green leaves which have fallen on dark rock, which kind of gives you that focal point to draw your eye into. So although I wanted this graphic shape of this jagged line of this rapid and the water flowing over the top, I did want something else in the frame to take your attention, and that's what I settled on. Originally, I was just shooting this with no filters whatsoever, but I decided to try a polarizing filter. And the polarizing filters work quite well, because what it's enabled me to do is to cut down some of those highlights, saturate some of those colours on the top of the water, which I think gives it a nicer effect. But when I use a polarizing filter, I always want to use it not at 100%. Let me just show you how that works. So you can see with no polarization at all that it's really quite bright. And as I turn it back the other way and increase the polarization, we get to the point where eventually it's almost too dark. But somewhere in between, you've got a little bit of reflected light. And the reason I do it that way is because if you think about it, water is reflective. And I don't think it's right to actually kill it completely. To me, it just looks too much. And it's a little bit wrong. I like to go a little bit subtler than that. So when you're using your polarizer, think of it as a tool to control, not a tool to eliminate reflections. Did I say square in the field? In the end, I preferred the 5x4 crop, which allowed more space to each side of the zigzag along the edge of the broken water. And I've been struggling this morning, but I have finally managed to find my 3rd photograph. There might even be a 4th if I'm lucky. Anyway, I've been looking at a number of different subjects this morning. They've all been quite harsh and quite graphic. The beginning of this day started off with that really bright green tree in front of the tar steps, and we've had the small cascade across the river with that harsh jagged line and those reflections on the surface of the water. I wanted something calmer and more gentle to look at and to try and fit in with that set of images, because there's some beautiful patches of calmness and gentle scenes within this woodland, but it's been hard to find one that I could photograph. Now, I haven't photographed any bluebells this year yet, and it's getting a little bit late, but I've noticed quite a few patches in these woods. But the trouble is, none of them really worked very well. They've all been too harsh, and like I said, I wanted something gentle with a plain, simple background and simple lighting. And I've just managed to do that. I've just managed to find something that fits that bill perfectly. I've got a number of bluebells up against a felled tree log, which is making a nice flat background. And the nice thing about this is that they're all on one focal plane, so I can zoom in, I can get nice and close, and I should get reasonable sharpness. They're also reasonably sheltered, so with a bit of luck I won't get too much movement due to any wind or disturbance, because I'm not a fantastic macro photographer or close-up photographer, but I like to do it once in a while to try something different. So let me set this up and I'll explain to you what I'm trying to achieve. This is a simple image. So what's important is just making sure that everything works really nicely together in the frame. Now, we're out in nature, so it's always going to be a compromise. I've put my 70-300 lens on the camera, mounted it in the vertical format, and I'm going to crop it to a 4:5 as well. I'll put some viewfinder video up so you can see what I'm looking at. So basically up through the middle of the frame, I've got the bluebells going right the way up through that middle, and that's the main point of the image. It's a little bit difficult with the lighting. I've actually used my fleece to create a little canopy to keep the direct sunlight off them. I'm hoping that's going to work out for me. I've had to do a little bit of tidying up and bending a few leaves and things out of the way because there were some elements which were distracting and they were cutting and coming out of the frame, and that would have drawn your eye. So hopefully this works reasonably well. I've taken a number of images at different exposures and they should come out. To find out more about using your telephoto lens to open up photography opportunities, watch this video next. It's easy to forget that there is a solution to most photography challenges. We just need a bit of effort and learn to see the opportunities all around us. See you next time.